Louis XIV was born in 1638, a child destined to become one of the most powerful monarchs in European history. From the moment he opened his eyes, the world around him whispered of crowns, courts, and a future carved in gold. He ascended the throne at only 4 years old, too young to understand the weight of the kingdom now resting on his tiny shoulders. His mother, Anne of Austria, ruled as regent, while the young king observed quietly from the edges of power. As he grew older, Louis watched the nobility struggle for influence, learning early that authority could slip away if not guarded carefully. These lessons shaped him, planting the seeds of a reign defined by absolute control. The Fronde, a series of noble rebellions, scarred his youth with fear and instability. Louis never forgot the feeling of danger creeping into the palace walls, or the fragile nature of royal security. When he finally took full power in his early 20s, he made a silent vow. Never again would the crown be threatened by divided authority. He would rule alone, firmly and brightly, like the sun he chose as his emblem. Thus began the Age of the Sun King, a ruler who believed his very existence brought order to France. His daily life became a ritual of grandeur, each gesture reinforcing his position at the center of the nation's universe. Louis XIV surrounded himself with art, music, and ceremonial splendor, creating a court where beauty and power danced together. He understood that spectacle was a form of politics, and few could command spectacle like he could. Versailles, once a modest hunting lodge built by his father, became the canvas for his dreams. Louis began transforming it into a palace unlike anything the world had ever seen. Architects, painters, sculptors, and gardeners worked tirelessly on his vision. Marble, gold, mirrors, and fountains stretched across the landscape, shimmering with royal ambition. The grand corridors echoed with the footsteps of nobles invited, then required, to live near their king. By drawing the aristocracy into his dazzling orbit, Louis ensured they remained loyal, distracted, and dependent on his favor. The Hall of Mirrors rose like a masterpiece of light, its reflective walls multiplying the brilliance of every candle and every dawn. Here, ambassadors bowed, treaties were signed, and the echo of elegance lingered long after the crowds dispersed. The gardens of Versailles bloomed with perfect symmetry, each path guiding visitors through groves, fountains, and hidden theaters of nature. Louis understood that the landscape itself could express royal power, ordered, harmonious, and eternal. Under his reign, the arts flourished beyond measure. Writers, composers, and painters found themselves lifted by royal patronage into a golden age of creativity. Louis XIV also reformed the army, building one of the strongest military forces in Europe. His campaigns expanded France's borders, though at great cost to his people and treasury. Every decision he made, whether in culture or war, echoed the belief that France must shine above all others. And with each passing year, Versailles grew brighter, grander, more magnificent, a symbol of a kingdom at its zenith. Yet, behind the glittering walls, shadows still lingered. The endless wars strained France's finances, and the common people carried the weight of taxes needed to sustain the king's splendor. As Louis aged, he watched the kingdom he had shaped so boldly face the consequences of decades of conflict. Still, he never wavered in his devotion to duty, believing deeply in the divine purpose of his rule. In his final years, the Sun King walked more slowly through the gilded rooms of Versailles. His family had suffered losses, his armies faced exhaustion, and time itself seemed to dim the brilliance that once defined him. When Louis XIV died in 1715, he left behind a legacy unlike any monarch before or after. His reign had lasted 72 years, the longest in European history, shaping France's identity for generations to come. Versailles remained his ultimate masterpiece, a palace where beauty and ambition intertwined in every stone. Its halls continued to glow with memories of courtly rituals, royal feasts, and the quiet footsteps of a king who believed he was the sun. Visitors from around the world would one day wander through its gardens and galleries, marveling at the world he built. They would feel the golden echoes of a time when France stood at the height of splendor and ceremony. Louis XIV's story became a tale of greatness and excess, brilliance and cost, triumph and consequence. A reminder that even the brightest stars leave long shadows behind them. And as you drift toward sleep, you can imagine the soft glow of candlelight flickering across mirrored walls, the gentle sound of fountains whispering in the gardens outside as the palace settles into night. The age of Louis XIV may have ended centuries ago, but its beauty endures in the quiet halls of Versailles, a golden dream, preserved in stone, waiting patiently for those who wander through history's twilight. As the decades rolled on, Versailles became more than a palace. It became a living symbol of Louis XIV's philosophy. Every ceremony, every feast, every morning ritual echoed the belief that order and spectacle were the heart of monarchy. The nobles who lived there adapted to a life of constant observation, where even the smallest gesture carried meaning. A smile, a bow, a whispered compliment could raise one's status or send it crumbling in an instant. Life at Versailles was a delicate dance, each step choreographed by the king's rules of etiquette. Nobles woke early to attend the lever, watched the king dine, and ended their day at the coucher, all to remain in his favor. Yet behind the polished manners and flowing silk gowns, the palace held its share of secrets. Hidden compartments, private apartments, and quiet corners allowed whispered alliances and forbidden romances to unfold. In the salons and gardens, philosophers and poets exchanged ideas that would shape the future of France. The Enlightenment was beginning to stir, gently questioning the very foundations of absolute monarchy. Though Louis held firm to tradition, the world beyond Versailles was changing, slowly, steadily, irreversibly. New voices emerged, speaking of reason, justice, and freedoms that stood in quiet contrast to the grandeur of the palace. Still, within its golden walls, Versailles thrived as a world unto itself. Musicians performed nightly, playwrights presented brilliant comedies, and dancers filled the air with elegance and rhythm. Grand festivals illuminated the gardens with lanterns and fireworks that painted the sky in shimmering colors. The guests who attended left with memories of wonders they could scarcely describe. The palace also served as a stage for political theater. Foreign ambassadors arrived in awe, realizing at once the immense power and wealth of France. As the palace expanded, so did its intricate system of apartments. The king's private rooms grew increasingly secluded, reflecting his desire for moments of solitude amid public demands. His personal gardens, quiet, hidden spaces, became his retreats. There he walked slowly, contemplating decisions that affected millions beyond the palace gates. The people of France, though distant from the royal spectacle, felt the weight of his policies. Taxes rose to support the wars and the maintenance of Versailles, creating hardships across towns and farms. Whispers of discontent spread, yet Louis viewed these sacrifices as necessary for the glory of France. He believed deeply in his mission, to strengthen the nation and leave a legacy that would stand unshaken. During his final years, the palace that once mirrored youthful ambition began to reflect something gentler. The fountains no longer symbolized triumph alone. They echoed the passage of time and the fragility of all earthly splendor. He spent long evenings in candlelit rooms, speaking with his remaining family and loyal courtiers. Their conversations grew softer, more reflective, touched by nostalgia and the quiet acceptance of age. After his death, the court mourned the monarch who had shaped an era. Versailles remained, grand, luminous, but now carrying the silence left behind by the one who brought it to life. The palace entered a new chapter, no longer defined by the rising sun, but by the memory of its creator. Visitors and courtiers alike found themselves wandering through its halls, as if listening for a voice that once commanded everything. Over time, the world around Versailles evolved, revolutions stirred, and monarchies faded. Yet the palace endured, standing as a testament to human ambition, artistry, and the power of a single vision. Historians would later describe the Gilded Age of Louis XIV as a paradox, magnificent yet costly, enlightened yet rigid. A chapter of brilliance whose light continues to shimmer across centuries, even as the world has transformed beyond recognition. And when travelers today walk along the Grand Canal or through the Hall of Mirrors, they feel the same quiet wonder, as if the spirit of the Sun King still lingers, softly illuminating the walls with golden fragments of a bygone age. As the years unfolded beyond Louis XIV's reign, Versailles continued to pulse with the echoes of his presence. Though the Sun King was gone, the palace still breathed in rhythm with the rituals he had once designed. Kings who followed walked the same mirrored halls, feeling both the weight and wonder of the legacy he left. To rule France from Versailles was to inherit not just a crown, but a stage set for grandeur. The courtiers who remained sensed the shift. Power felt different without the radiant certainty of Louis XIV at the center. Yet they still gathered in the salons, whispering news, weaving alliances, and performing the delicate dance of courtly life. The palace itself seemed to adapt, its golden surfaces reflecting the temperaments of new monarchs and changing times. While some kings embraced the splendor, others felt overwhelmed by its scale and silent expectations. Architects and artisans continued their work, preserving the palace's immense beauty. They restored frescoes, polished marble, and tended to the fountains that mirrored the sky. In the gardens, the seasons moved gently through the tree-lined paths. Spring blossoms softened the sharp geometry of the hedges, while autumn cast amber light across the Grand Canal. Visitors who arrived from distant lands found themselves mesmerized. They spoke of Versailles as if it were a dream lifted from myth, a place too perfect to belong to reality. Philosophers and artists studied its architecture, seeing in it the intricate balance between nature and power. They observed how every angle, every perspective, had been designed to elevate the king above all things. Long after the Sun King's passing, Versailles remained a symbol of an age defined by light, ceremony, and artistic brilliance. No matter how history shifted, its silhouette stood firmly against the horizon like a memory carved in stone. Even as political tensions swelled across France, the palace endured with serene dignity. Its fountains continued to dance, unaware of the unrest that brewed beyond its gilded gates. The common people, though far from the life of the court, knew of Versailles' glittering reputation. They heard stories of endless feasts, glittering halls, and ceremonies that never seemed to sleep. For many, the palace represented both awe and distance, beauty born from a kingdom that often struggled beneath its weight. Yet the image of Versailles continued to stir fascination, a golden dream that hovered just out of reach. The Enlightenment grew stronger, and new ideas drifted toward the court like gentle, questioning winds. Writers and thinkers challenged old forms of power, encouraging a world shaped by reason and human rights. Though Louis XIV never lived to see these changes, the age of transformation still unfolded beneath the light he once commanded. His legacy became part of the debate, admired for its brilliance, questioned for its cost. But Versailles, through all these shifting tides, remained timeless. Its walls, gardens, and courtyards held the stories of countless lives, intertwined with the monarchy's rise and uncertainty. And as centuries quietly slipped by, the Sun King's influence continued to shimmer, not as a blinding force, but as a warm afterglow gently resting on the palace he created. Visitors wandering its grand halls today still pause with a sense of reverence. They feel history breathing softly through the marble and mirrors, carrying whispers of an era long gone. The Gilded Age of Louis XIV has become a lullaby of splendor, ambition, and the delicate balance between brilliance and fragility. A story preserved in the golden silence of Versailles, waiting for dreamers to listen.